Welcome to tonight's show, the game show. Are we silly or what? The only game show that not only does everybody win, you couldn't lose if you tried. And oh yes, they wanted me to announce Kairoot's wardrobe is courtesy of Bill Blass and Sears. And we're off to the races. We're going to try some of the Kairoots again. And Kairoot said, if this is hard to hear through the airwaves, it's primary packs, P-A-C-K-S, like herds. The leaders of primary packs have but one lesson to convey, and that is, I am the strongest. And then the question is, what then do secondary principles, leaders, whatever, figures, have to teach? We've hit little variations of this, but still it is such of a mainstay of modern civilization that I'll hit at it again because it's very hard to remember because of the gravity, the weight, the structure, physically, chemically, of the human nervous system in the context of what we've been calling the city and civilization. And that is the very things, shall I repeat one more time? The leaders of primary packs have but one lesson to convey, I am the strongest. Primary packs, a wolf, a bull moose, anything running a pack or herd, the leader has one lesson, and not forget the ever-popular baboons. I know because I always hear from some baboons. It could be worse. We're moving up. Used to we only had bricklayers and attorneys watching over in Alabama. Now we got some baboons from the Birmingham Zoo. They only have one lesson, and that's it. I'm the strongest. At the primary level in you, in your own pack, there's only one lesson. I am the strongest, which comes out, at least non-verbally, before it gets up high enough that you start dreaming and talking about it and turn it into a hobby. It's just simply being healthy. But then the question would be, as Kairoot puts it, then what do secondary principles, leaders, have to teach? The inclination why I stopped at again is that any civilized, intelligent, sophisticated person would have an answer for that. Well, to begin with, they would see a distinction, even using my symbolism and metaphors, that, all right, I can see what you mean. But then they would say, but once we get into the civilized secondary area of man, to use my terms, we're talking about a whole new, and you know how clever they are with words, they'd probably say, ball game. See, Kairoot would refuse to do that, which I don't know why I'd prove to them, because he would have said something instead of that, and they'd go, what the hell does that mean? See, so there you are. If you do not beat people over the head with cliches, they'll go, God damn, where'd my headache go? Which passes for original thought, or at least thinking in the city. You would think, ordinary people would, that there are secondary lessons that are being taught. They would think it from religion. They would think it from religion. They would certainly think it from... This is not a mystical symbol. We're trying to get air conditioning. You would certainly think it in the area of education, but that seems pretty specific because we could narrow it down to somebody trying to teach somebody else how to repair air conditioners. And you could say, well, that can get to be specific. But it gets into the area that would be singularly interesting, expansive to the human nervous system. The arts, literature, fiction, religion, poetry. And you would think that there is another lesson going on because a priest or a rabbi or a poet does not try and convey a message to you on the basis of, hey, come to confession or I'll kick your ass. I can beat you up. That would seem to be ridiculous. How come we don't have air?
It's right.
Oh.
It's not cool.
And the ordinary mind would say there is a complete distinction. There is a difference if you're going to use as any kind of metaphor the herd instinct among wolves, and whoever's in charge, the head wolf, has one lesson. He understands it, they understand it. He's the strongest. If he ceases to be or somebody wants to challenge him, etc., that's the only lesson. Other wolves do not, any kind of pack animal, no matter in your own human nervous system up to that point, there is no lesson that the leader has to teach. There's nothing else they look for. It amounts to one lesson and one lesson only. I'm the strongest. That's why I'm in charge. Everybody understands that. And the human mind would want to say, the secondary world of man wants to believe, as it should, that there is a quantum, discrete, absolute, distinct difference in what humans have to teach one another. And to that, Kyruk didn't write down here, but if I may be so bold as to paraphrase him, how about considering the possibility of... I know some of you didn't turn on cable to be intellectually informed. You're trying to get away from the PBS shows, but we all have to work on the grants that we receive. Are you so provincially minded that you would absolutely deny out of hand, refuse to look at, that intellectual, artistic, spiritual lessons from leaders, which is, Kyruk called them principles, so he didn't have to say leaders twice in one sentence. Because, if you change the word, if you put in a synonym, I mean, it's a whole new ball game then. But besides you, several of you giggling, which you're probably not either, you were either Catholics or not Catholic, I don't know which, about a priest insisting that you come to confession or mass on the basis, what do you have to teach me? Teach you hell, I just whip your ass. I can beat up 4 or 5 people like you. And you think, well, that's good enough for me. I'll return to my religion. Besides a little laugh, you would think that otherwise what is going on in the collective, and of course we're not talking about one specific priest somewhere or one person. We're talking about the collective institutionalized civilization of man, that which is beyond a physical level, which is supposedly of no great consequence amongst more civilized people, because civilized people do not debate politics and end up in a fist fight. I mean, that only happens in New Jersey and other weird places, Germany maybe. But you know that people on the west side, people with suits and ties and education in Manhattan, do not fight over politics. They may have an aggressive, perhaps even a heated, passionate discussion, one political system versus another. But they do not fight. That's not the point. Swift or Poe or whoever it was, they like to quote him, and I would too if I knew who the hell it was, that just because you've silenced a man, you have not changed his mind. Which, of course, in Alabama they like to throw in, no, but you've shut him up. Which may be why there is such a dearth of ancient proverbs and truisms have come from the South. But at any rate, the whole thing, just because if you beat a man up, silence him, kill him and all that, but just beat him up. If you just push him around and he says, right, I agree, socialism should have lived. They just did it wrong, I agree then. And he didn't really. Just because, a man whose mind's changed against his will is of the same opinion still. That was it. Dr. John, no, I don't know who it was. A man converted against his will is of the same opinion still. All right. And so all intellectual, all civilized people collectively, not just individuals, but everyone understands that, yes, that's the way it is, which is another way of saying, yes, that's the way it should be, which if we get around to it, is the great efficient use of treating that which is being aspired to as a fait accompli, which is, for those of you that didn't like the religion I offered you slipped in Friday, there's another whole religion, not just for here, for a universe, because that is the way that everything grows. But back to this. May I suggest that you would miss an opportunity that civilized intellectual people would miss, which is part of the justice of it, because if anybody was going to see this, I could get at an ordinary level, this is no consequence, but I could get more physical, I could get people in the basement more likely to even consider this than I could educated people. To infer that, hey, the byplay, the struggle between ideas, and they go, yes, I understand that completely. It is not that far removed from one baboon being in charge of the pack on one basis, which is that he's the strongest, and that's it. You could more get bricklayers, people in the basement, physically oriented people, you could more likely get them to give that any hearing at all than you could the educated, which is the way it's supposed to be. Do you see the beauty of it? Because the more that you are living in your own nervous system, just in the ordinary sense, the higher up you're living, the more you will dismiss this completely out of hand. Because what you're wired up is to say, well, wait, this is not even worth considering because this is, you've already described unknowingly, they might say to me that I was too dumb, or Kairos was, you're unknowingly describing the operative, the definitive definition and separation between the civilized, the intelligent, and the otherwise. Because it's the otherwise that will only say, hey, my ideas are best because I can beat you up. I'm the strongest. And so you got a bunch of illiterate, unsophisticated people, and there'll be one guy. They're troublemakers. They're certainly not intellectuals. They're certainly not really civilized. It's just some kind of herd instinct. And so they will absolutely, without giving it any consideration, deny that it could operate at another level. That the battle of ideas, wherein the superior theory, the superior view, through such things as the scientific method in the hard sciences, or the pseudoscientific method in the pseudosciences, or the soft scientific method in the soft sciences. But the whole thing is still that cream and real fat people will rise to the top. I don't know why, but they will, especially if you're sitting in the back. What do secondary principles have to teach? I'm going to leave it, but do you hear it? Your own secondary mind. Every molecule in an ordinary man's intellect at the ordinary level will tell him that what secondary principles, what secondary leaders, priests, rabbis, politicians, just anybody that seems to be a leader. Even if you don't particularly like the politician, he's of a different party, but there's a guy and he gets on TV or he comes through your town and by God, you'll stop and notice and he'll say, well, I say so-and-so. And even if you think, well, I'm not, my father was a Republican, I'm a Republican, this guy's a Democrat, so I'm not going to vote for him. But there seems to be some attraction. You'll stop. Of course, then sociologists and psychologists, I'm sure, try to explain it as the charisma of fame and fortune, etc., which is based on something real, but they refuse, as they're supposed to simply look right at it and say the guy is hormonal, testosterone wise, he's a head baboon, except he can talk. Oh no, I'm sorry. I have listened to this show and I've heard some. This is absolutely insane. Right? Sure is. Yes, sirree. Well, it's got to be. It's got to be insane, or we wouldn't be on cable. You like the subtle way this has worked out? I keep referring to cable, and Kairos writes about them. That wasn't the purpose that we started taping these to begin with. In case any of you think that I've forgotten, that the point is not we're playing to the cable. This was a side effect, you people on cable, no offense to you. But this was, like scraps that fell from the table. We were trying to do something else. I was beginning to wonder, would that be offensive to people watching us on cable? And I thought, boy, talk about your new possible heights of oxymoronical verbal mumblings and ramblings. I'd like to see a letter from somebody watching us on cable who was offended. You think it'd be legible? And Kairos said, the wind attendant wiped your shield and noted. They got red twice, and I don't know whether anybody, but that's not the point. But he noted, hormones will drive a primary mobile, but they are pretty low octane to propel a secondary rocket. This is also attuned to one later on, if anybody asks for it or not, that Kairos pointed out one of these obvious facts that are obvious once you hear it, if you can hear anything, that hormones weigh more than thoughts. Which, if you can hear it, also, may I suggest, has some relationship to the one we just left. That with pack animals at the primary level, whoever's leading the pack, whoever's got elected, whoever is prime minister, whoever is president, whoever is pope of that baboon pack, has got one lesson, that I'm the strongest. That's what's propelling that vehicle. Yes, but when you reach another level, we're talking about something else. That's right. Yes, sirree. Okay. Which, of course, you are. I'm not just being sarcastic. I'm being real sarcastic. Huh? No? Okay, well, I'm using real as a synonym for, I'll get it, intellectually. That was it. The wind attendant wiped your shield and noted, hormones will drive a primary mobile. It will drive a baboon herd. but it's pretty low octane to propel a secondary rocket or vehicle. So if you were really falling into this, which I always find that funny when I say it, that's why I say it a lot. If you're falling into this, you say, wait a minute, that denies just what you said. May I refer you back to... No, it doesn't. It propels it just right. But then if you change it over a little bit and go, well, wait a minute, does that mean that propels it all it could? No, it doesn't mean that. That's why he says it's pretty low octane. It'll run it. You can think, but absolutely doing almost nothing. There's another Kairut in here that part of the efficiency, the economics of city life is that over in the city, maximizing stagnation minimizes effort. Well, the more middle class you are, the less you got to do. Now, I know middle class people say, no, we're sinking. No, you ain't sinking. Well, I don't have as much money as I used to. Well, hey, I'll send you a teargram or something. We're not talking about money. The middle class makes the least effort. All you got to do is become numb. Another Kairut way down in here. Become numb and domesticated. Being middle class, remember, there's another Kairut that says is synonymous with being middle dead. The more that you will accept the collective thinking, which you're supposed to, of course, if you're a person simply with a cable TV and watching us by accident. But ordinary people, you're supposed to take the collective wisdom, wherever it is, whatever culture, whatever religion, whatever the leader of the pack, whatever your cultural or political leader says, whatever everyone else agrees to. That is the maximizing of stagnation, and it minimizes effort. Put it to you another way. Why run if you don't have to? Why run if you can walk? And if you're middle class, you can certainly walk. And then I can say, well, why walk if you can ride? And if you're middle class, you can ride. Well, why drive? Why drive if you can be driven? And if you're middle class, you can get somebody to drive you, a carpool, hitchhike. But why have somebody drive you if you can stay home? And then by then, the middle class, that is the middle area of your own nervous system, up in here goes, now we're getting somewhere. In other words, you're beginning to hint, they would be saying to Kairut, you're beginning to hint that it's possible not to make any effort. Which is, again, the one that's kind of the efficiency of taking future plans and treating them, though, as they're a fait accompli, but in this case, it's reversed. For those of you that were trying to jump ahead, no, we're not going to stop and deal with that one. That is what I just said. And Kairut said the basis for ordinary humor and the concept of irony lies in the operational gap between man's primary nervous system, the good basement part, the baboon part, the pack part, and the secondary talking part. Do you understand? All ordinary humor. That's what you're dealing with. Well, let me read the addendum. The addendum says, for those of you that like the literary aspects of this, there are none. Oh, they're these. It's like in parentheses, sometimes Kairut will skip a space and then add something. I don't know, maybe he forgot. Maybe he found another book. He'd run out of, plagiarizing this other stuff, and he found another book with something else in it, so he put this in. As long as the seventh floor is separated from the fifth by the sixth, incongruities, ridicule, and sarcasm will always have a home. All right, ordinary humor. Long time ago, Kairut pointed out, but now it should be old hat to you. Ordinary humor without hostility is not funny. Ordinary people will not laugh, and it's no big deal. It's not that mystical to see. You can take any joke, take the punchline, extract any, and if all you got to do is look at it, and there's some hostility towards somebody somewhere. All you got to do is take out the hostility. Just change one word, and the thing's not funny to ordinary people. So you've got a kind of aggression. You've got a kind of obnoxiousness. It's a kind of hostility. It's a kind of, everybody laughs at the head baboon. He tells a joke if he could. Why? Well, he'll whip my ass. You'll be surprised how funny a king is. Everybody knows that. I mean, the king can tell a joke that you've heard 100 times, and by God, I don't know why. Some people just tell a joke. The baboon can just turn around and look at you and say, 17. And even if you've never heard 17, you go ahead and laugh because it just sounds funny. He's numbered the jokes to make it fast. I assume you all know about that. All right, this was a little more specific because it has to do with the transfer of energy. It's not a treatise on humor. But Kairos says the basis for ordinary humor and the concept of irony lies in the operational gap between the gap operationally. It doesn't really exist because it's a continuous growth, but it is the operational gap between your pack, between the baboon, between those in your basement, between that at the primary level of your nervous system and then somewhere right up here in the frontal lobes. There is an operational gap, and it's that gap. It is a place to where those in the basement will reach up and talk to those upstairs. But every time they do, there's always a little piece of those upstairs going, what? They misunderstand a few things. The people in the basement, they got different tastes. There's a certain operational space between the two. That is the basis. There'd be no such thing as irony. People ordinarily, if they were going to try and describe irony, whether they use the term much or not itself, they use the concept. They would place it, I'm sure, on behavior. That is, a man says, I am your friend. My name is Takamata. For those, I am here to help you. I am here to spread the gospel. Everyone who is not converted by this afternoon will be killed. Thank you so much. And all you got to do is just be walking around sophisticated, and you go, talk about your irony. The man says he's our friend. He's here to spread the love of God. And he gave us, what now? What have we got left? About 20 minutes to either convert over to his way of thinking or he's going to kill us. Talk about irony. It's not behavior. Although that qualifies. That's what the dictionary would say. It is based upon. And the behavior aspect is simply a reflection like everything else. It is based upon the operational gap between the pack, the herd, the collective, the physical part of your nervous system, the nonverbal physical part, and the talking part. It is not, Kairos done several, it is not surprising in some way the amount of irony in life. Now, hell, if we're going to go along that line, it's surprising that people don't see more irony. Every time somebody steps from their left foot to their right, symbolically, there is a piece of irony. You don't have to look out at religions or political systems to say, well, people talk a good game, people say they're humanitarians. The great old story, or one of them that somebody gives charity to this poor family down the street, and the family just fawns on them and kisses their feet, and every week they bring them something. After 2 or 3 months, they bring it that whatever day they bring it, and the guy says, we got a cousin coming, could you bring some more next week? A little additional? And the charity giver thinks, well, screw these people. Maybe burn their house down or insult them. And you go, well, there's irony for you. No, that ain't irony for you. People find those kinds of examples, or the church killing people in the name of love, they find that to be ironic. It's not ironic. If anything's alive, it's surprising, figuratively speaking, it's surprising that people do not see more irony. It can't be otherwise. The only thing that's not ironic on this planet are dead people. That's the only thing that could possibly escape irony. Everything else is, if it's not ironic right now, it will be in a second, or it just was, or else you're just not looking, or else maybe it's in bed with the flu. But it'll be up shortly, and as soon as it is, it'll be ironic. Well, I gave all the credit there to irony, but don't forget, he included down here in the addendum ridicule, sarcasm, and incongruities. And Kairos said the human intellect is made to dream of tomorrow and make models of the future. But how is it to be fed and encouraged if all of your sources for feeding and nourishment are peers of the present? That doesn't need any comment, does it? If you're trying to get to the new world, how cheap is it for me to stand here and try to make metaphors on top of metaphors? I don't know. Real cheap. Okay. In that case, I can afford it. Plus, if you don't mind being considered dumb, you can afford anything. Who said I didn't mind? Oh. If you're trying to discover the new world, and the only people you listened to were people who believed the world was flat, what would you do? If the mind is made, and this is not simply an example of, believe it or not, I was going to say irony, it's not that. Because it doesn't just say that, it's not inferring that in some way men try to do something extraordinary and they end up with dunderheads for teachers. Which is not to say that's not true, but that's not the point. If the human intellect is made, which it is, to dream of tomorrow, if it wasn't, you wouldn't get up in the morning. You wouldn't get up intellectually. It is made to dream of tomorrow. It is the nature of being forever incomplete. It is made to dream of tomorrow and to make models of the future. There's always further aspirations in the secondary world. Not the primary. I know people say it is, but we've been through that. And people even try and take side trips such as, all right, I'll lose weight, I'll get a nose job, I'll take up weightlifting. But you can't really change the nature of your own personal evolution at a physical level, at a primary level. You can lose weight, you can gain weight, and of course you can certainly do something with reconstructive surgery. But you're still left with the fact at the primary level to do it justice, to do it just right, to minimize and maximize its efficiency. What you do is feed it, take it to the bathroom, let it sleep, and if you're in favor of the race continuing, you periodically engage in naughty activities. For you people in Alabama, that means. Or for you people in the Bible Belt of Alabama, you get to know your fellow man. Because now I can see some of them writing that down like, well, he's finally talking about some kind of intelligent activity that I can understand. You know? It's that the human nervous system, the mind, as Kyrick puts it this time, the human intellect is made to dream of tomorrow and to make models of the future. But how is it to be fed and encouraged if all of your sources, if the only place you look, are those who are presently, those who are peers of the present, which at the ordinary level you got nowhere else to look. Now people sense otherwise, which is the basis, again, of all the dreams of hidden knowledge somewhere, or very wise men over in caves in Tibet or in Wisconsin, that know some great secret, but you got to get to them, because it's not the kind of stuff you're going to find down at your neighborhood library. You're not going to find it at a church or a temple. You got to go at somewhere extraordinary. That's the basis of it. But Kyrick points out that if your sources are still simply peers of the present, that is, supporters of the court as it is, they can say otherwise, but if that's all they are, how do you expect to get any kind of nourishment to make you see the future? But as long as you dream, well, I need some help. I just can't get to it. Good going. If they would just make, finally, white bread and have a little, maybe sesame seeds on the top, then I'd be somewhere. There is a beauty. I was about to change the page, but the kind of thing I was just doing is kind of a throwaway. If you were listening, it's still back to this. It's the dreams of tomorrow. That yes, I could be better if I could be smarter if I was just smarter. There is no sense in an intelligent man getting in any kind of intellectual debate with that kind of mental wherewithal. And speaking of bullshit, wherewithal, sorry, I misread it, is a little rhyme that had to do with the question of possible human change, of becoming more intelligent, etc. It was a rhyme. I assume you got it. Fran read it to a T, but here it goes. DNA wants you to stay here in your own hometown. DNA, in fact, does say, hey, sucker, what other choice you got? Does anybody remember? If people understood what was going on, what's going on couldn't keep going on. DNA wants you to stay here in your own hometown. But DNA, in fact, will even say, where are you going? But notice, with any intelligent man, anybody that lives above the basement, notice this. DNA, by God, doesn't do my thinking for me. I'm not simply a walking around pair of gonads. Don't write me from Alabama. That's not some secret organization. I'm not just a bundle of hormones walking around. No sirree. I'm not some baboon herd. I'm a thinker. I was trying to look like a thinker. I'm not sure. Did I? Was I close? When I was doing it, I suddenly thought, well, it looks like somebody having some kind of attack. Is that what people's been doing all these years on buses? I'd turn around, I'd see them. Jesus, now I feel embarrassed. I thought they were all getting bus sick or something, but now I think about it, maybe they were thinking. And I just didn't realize it. But I'm still glad I wasn't sitting next to them, just in case. Countdown to the telethon. Jesus, 60 seconds, and it's a 3 addendum one. Too complicated anyway. Even I don't understand it. I guess I was on the bus too long. Well, for you people going off, we're running out of cable time. I was going to read one to take you out, since we can't get around to it anymore. And Cox said, another extremely efficient method life employs to see that the secondary progress proceeds à tempo is to cause men to treat certain intellectual aspirations as though they were already fait accompli.